So the way a compressor works, you have a threshold, and anything louder than the threshold is actually going to be pulled down, and then at the end you have a makeup gain where it brings everything up. So if you have a singer that sang a track and they have really loud parts and then really quiet parts, what'll happen is the loud parts, if they're louder than the threshold, will get pulled down. The quiet parts are quieter than the threshold, so they won't be affected. And then at the end, there's a makeup gain, and it'll make both parts louder. So essentially, the loud part is back as loud as it was before, but all the quiet parts are louder. So it's essentially making the dynamic range of the entire thing less. It's making it smaller. So this is great on drums. It can make your drums fatter. Compression is great on pretty much everything, but it needs to be used with care. But I'm here to talk about sidechain compression.
Sidechain compression uses one audio signal to turn down the volume of another audio signal within a compressor. Usually, it's used to duck the volume of a synth or a bass when a kick hits, and it sounds like this. Run your trigger signal through an audio bus in your DAW, load a compressor on your main channel, and switch it to the sidechain mode to pull your trigger signal in. Pull the threshold down to audibly hear the effect. For a quick reacting sidechain, use a low attack value and a low-ish release value with a high ratio. This will be pretty good for big pads, leads, and basses.
So what I've got is I've got a little bus set up, just a unity gain bus. And now I'm going to set up my compressor on my bass. So we'll just open up the stock Dyne 3 compressor limiter in Pro Tools. You'll see this does have a key input. And I can now select that bus that I just set up, bus 1, my little mono bus. So now, once I click this on the sidechain section here, you'll see there's also some filters. We're not going to dig into that right yet, but you'll see there's this little key button here. This is going to enable that key input to affect the compressor that we're using on the bass.
And we open it up and we select sidechain, audio from kick track number 1, plug it in, and now we have the ratio over here and the threshold. If I put the ratio on 1, nothing will happen. If I put it on 2, for example, or any other value above 1, and I drag down the threshold a little bit, things are going to start moving. If I drag it down all the way, it's getting this pumping effect. That's the basic principle of sidechaining.
Now I'll show you what sidechain filtering can do. In this case, I'll put it over the master bus. This is frequently used for stereo bus compression, where in this case where we've got a mix, it's got a lot of low end stuff that's sub 100 hertz. If we were to just strap a bus compressor over the 2 mix, most of what would be triggering that compressor is that bass information, all that low end. So in this case, I'll pop my compressor over my master fader. And now I'm going to use these handy sidechain filters. So I'll set up just a standard bus compressor. I like about 20 milliseconds attack. Release is fine, kind of straight up the middle at 80 milliseconds. Now I'm going to engage this low frequency filter. This is a high pass filter. And now you've got continuous control anywhere from 20 hertz all the way to 20K. That'll set the corner of the high pass filter and say like, hey, in other words, if I have my high pass filter set at 80 hertz, anything under 80 hertz or 80 hertz and below is not going to trigger the compressor. What this is going to do is actually give you more low end in your mix, because that's going to go through uncompressed. It's going to remain its original volume. Everything else above that is going to be compressed as soon as it crosses the threshold.
Here's my compressor. Double click it. And there we go. Now if I click on this arrow here, it's going to open up the side chaining function. So this area is, you can take an input, or take the output of something, feed it into this, and this will affect how this actually works. So I'm going to turn the side chaining on. I'm going to say the audio from kick. So you can see now the threshold gets a level on it when the kick plays. If we click on the little headphone button, it'll just play the, oops, on here. it'll play you what the sidechain's actually hearing. Now, if we want, say if we've got an actual drum loop which has more than a kick, it's got a kick, snare, hi-hats, and it's not separated out, it's all in one channel, it's a mixed down wave file or something, you can actually go into here and you can turn on an EQ, and you can turn it into a high pass, so it'll only pick up the sub-frequencies of whatever loop you're playing. It's a really good way to kind of isolate a particular sound, but because our kick channel is just a plain kick channel, we don't need that. So if we listen to this pads again with the kick, turn the headphones off. Now if I bring the threshold down, you see it's going to compress it each time the kick hits. It's all good. Most people are familiar with this sound, but when it gets interesting is chucking a gate after it. A gate, of course, it only lets through sound which is over a particular volume level. So by putting the gate after the compressor, when it compresses the sound, it's actually going to kill it completely. So if with the gate right down, and as we bring it up, we'll find that sweet spot. Now it's good. This is a good fun time to actually play with the release time and the ratio of the compressor, which determines how long it takes to come back after it's been compressed and how much it actually gets compressed by, to try and get it rhythmically going along with the rhythm of your tune.